Coming up in all angles, fingerprint scanning being used to check on workers, used in local companies, then schools got involved. What are the issues, and can you just say no? And thank you so much for joining us for another edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson, and as always, a very special welcome to our viewers on onespotmedia.com. Well, joining us in studio to discuss our topic, we have Kevin Jones. He's principal at Mona High. Also with us is Owen Speed, who is president of the Jamaica Teachers Association. Rory Banks is director of IT at Simtai Consulting. And rounding out our panel is attorney at law Andre Shackelford. Later on in the program, we'll be joined by some representatives from the business community to talk to us a little bit about the same issue of fingerprint scanning in the context of the business environment. But first, before we go to our guests, producer Giovanni Dennis has this overview.
This is Mona High. The school recently implemented a biometric registration system which sees staff using their thumb or index finger in addition to signing the daily attendance register. Now, this is a biometric attendance machine, more popularly called a fingerprint scanner. This one is located at the Mona High School in St. Andrew. Now, the overwhelming majority of teachers here are okay with using this machine to enter their fingerprint to register in the mornings here. However, there are 7 teachers who have refused to use this machine, citing privacy concerns. Antia Park is the technical coordinator at Mona High and is the administrator for the system.
The teachers, when they come, I would input their ID number. So the ID number is assigned to each person. So I input that ID number, then they place their finger on the glass screen that's there. It takes the image of their finger and then it stores it and assigns it to the ID number. So no names are placed inside the machine. So you cannot identify whose scan is related to what number. That's only internal. So what happens, persons are concerned that if the clock is removed, the data can be used elsewhere. You will only get numbers from the machine. You won't get names. So nobody can identify whose print it is.
Under Jamaican law, a person can only be compelled to provide fingerprints in specific criminal matters. Section 3A of the Fingerprints Act says the person has the right to refuse to have his fingerprints and photograph taken. Kevin Jones, who is principal of Mona High, has said on a record that the school will not punish staff who decide not to use the machine. Other schools like Old Harbour High in St. Catherine have tried implementing a similar system but were met with opposition from staff. Meanwhile, the minister responsible for education, Carl Samuda, on Tuesday said no teacher can be forced to provide his or her fingerprint.
Written permission must also be sought and received from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information before such a system is implemented. Mr. Speaker, I also want to make it clear that a teacher cannot be fired or refusing to comply with a request for fingerprint scanning at schools. There are alternative systems in place to achieve the objectives without the use of biometric data.
Opposition members seemed divided on the issue.
What example does the minister think will be given to the children in school who are enjoined to come to school on time and not to school when the teachers, their preceptors, have no efficient system whereby their discipline can be enjoined? What is the system that the minister will implement? He mentions that there are mechanisms that are available for enjoining presence, punctuality by the teaching profession. Would he say what those are? And would he note the irony that in most private sector companies, you have to provide your fingerprints?
You could have a scenario where potentially in criminal conduct, fingerprints are taken from stored someplace, the security of the storage of those fingerprints. There are a whole set of questions which arise. And while I understand what would have motivated the principal to move in this direction, we have to take into consideration the privacy of individuals, the fact that individuals own their data, and the use of their data should be subject to their consent, their knowledge, etc. So I just want to know specifically what the ministry has directed Mona High or any other school, given the knowledge that is in the public domain.
Well, they are to desist from the practice.
Schools aside, some entities in Jamaica have been using fingerprint scanners for several years. This 2012 Gleaner article reported that companies like Tankweld and Berger Paints were requiring staff fingerprints for signing. So, what's the fuss about? Giovanni Dennis for All Angles.
So what is the fuss about? Thank you so much for that, Giovanni. But let me start out with Mr. Jones. So the whole idea came from a situation, a problematic situation we understand you were having in terms of accountability. Just explain briefly for us why you decided to go this route.
So what we had at Mona High School was a clocking system. So when you enter the teacher center, there's a clock on the wall, and there is a board with a card for each teacher. So let's say I arrive at work at 7 o'clock in the morning. So what I would do is that I will take up my card and I will insert it into the clock. It prints the time on it, let's say 7:15. And then I go over to the attendance register and I write 7:15 and sign beside my name. So what has been happening now is that there are some teachers, and it's in the minority, where they would be running late for work and they would call a friend, a colleague, and say, hey, I'm going to be late for work this morning. Can you clock in for me? So let's say Mr. Speed is my friend. We both work at Mona High School. He's going to be late. He's going to come to school at 8 o'clock. I'm on my way. I'm going to reach at 7:15. So I clock in at 7:15. I take up Mr. Speed's card and I clock it at 7:15. So when he comes in at 8 o'clock, he just takes up his card, that's 7:15 on it. He then signs to his name and he inserts 7:15 in the government's register. So when the vice principal at the end of each week goes through the attendance register, you're going to see Mr. Speed clocking in at 7:15 on the card, and you're going to see it also in the attendance register. So it's hard to catch the teachers. So when we recognize that some persons were actually involved in this malpractice, you know, in this fraud, we decided now to change the system and to come up with something that is more foolproof, so to speak. And that was what prompted us to purchase a biometric attendance data machine.
Do you have a camera in the room in which the teachers used to sign and clock in?
Yes, we do.
So that couldn't have been used to try and catch the fraudsters?
Yes, but when we learned about it, to be honest, the camera system, I don't want to say on air at how many days would pass before it dumps that information, but at the time when we learned about it, the time would have passed for us to go back in and look at the recording of what took place in the teacher center at Mona High School. Okay,
so and just for clarity, you've discontinued it following the minister's announcement, statement?
Well, what has happened though, when we implemented the clock system in our teacher center, of the 121 employees at the school, only 7 persons said, sir, we need some time to think about this. So 7 out of 121. So when...
I soon come to that issue of consent and genuine consent. But I was really asking you, though, is as of this morning, is if you've discontinued using the system.
Let me answer you this way.
That's not a yes or no?
Let me answer you this way. It's a multifunctional machine. So what happens now is that it has the option of the password. And so we allow the teachers, we say to the teachers, you do have an option. You can use your thumb or the password. And since this morning, a number of teachers have come in and they have continued to use their thumb because they prefer to use it. Okay. And others now, just a few of them, are using the password.
The minister, though, also said that permission is needed from the ministry before schools should be using the fingerprint scanning any at all.
Right. I'm just here seeing the clipping, to be honest. And I saw an article in the paper today. So I will speak with the relevant persons at the ministry and we'll take it from there.
Okay, and just quickly as well, before implementing this, what steps did you take to get consent?
We had 2 staff meetings at Mona High School prior to implementing the system. One late August, I think it was the 27th of August, and then we had another staff meeting the first week of September. And in the staff meeting, I spoke to the teachers about the rationale behind, installing this new system. And I asked for them to buy into the program because, we're trying to improve accountability at Mona High School.
You make it so nice and optional and voluntary, but it wasn't really.
Well,
right?
we presented it that way.
We have a copy of a memo that you sent to your staff. I don't know if we can bring up a copy in which really teachers were told, right, that this is what is going to be the system.
Well, we informed the teachers that this is the direction in which the school is going. And to my surprise, to be honest, when we saw more than 100 persons signing up and using their thumb, I was overwhelmingly surprised, and I was most pleased, yes. And the other persons, the 7 persons who have said that they needed time, we haven't called them in to talk to them. We haven't said anything to them. We understand that it's a privacy issue. Some persons are a bit uncomfortable. And we just allow them to come in and sign the attendance register as is.
Okay, needed to get some of that as background. Mr. Speed, let me bring you in here because you were aware before that schools in the system have been, a couple schools, I don't know how many, have been introducing this?
No, I wasn't aware until maybe about on the weekend. And we are hearing that a few more of them have been using the system.
Yes.
The Jamaica Teachers Association's position, though, is that we don't condone dishonesty in the system.
Meaning the teachers who
Yes, and we would like the teachers to understand that they need to get to school on time. In teaching, on time means before time, certainly, because you need to be there to receive your students. But
have you, though, managed to get any indication of how widespread this is?
On punctuality or the use of the fingerprinting? I'm just hearing some numbers. So far, and just since this evening, I'm hearing that up to about 15 schools are using it. That's a cause for concern because I heard 8 before, and we are hearing 15 now. I don't know if it will grow any further. Hope it won't, because I'm in full agreement with every word that came out of the mouth of the minister on this matter.
All right, hold that thought for me. We're going to go to break and we'll pick up when we come back and bring in our other guests as well. Remember, you can tweet along with us. Our hashtag is TVJ All Angles. We're back in a moment.